Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvabhuta Guhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. Gunanam samabhavasya Brahmsho nahyupapadyate Avidyadev prasuptatvad Nachanyo heturuchyate Itaretara hetutve Pravritti syat sadanava Niyamo na pravrittinam Guneshvatmani va bhaved Vishesho muktabadhanam Tadarthyena cha yujyate Artharthinostva sambandha Narthigno netaropi va. Bhagavan Bhashyakara Sankhyakalpanam tavad nirakaroti. In the verses that we read, Bhagavan Shankaracharya nirakaroti refutes Sankhyakalpanam, the kalpana that Sankhyas have about the origin of the universe, about the reality of the universe, etc. Because Sankhya is basically Dvaitins, dualists. Who is a dualist? One who accepts two independent realities. For them, Purusha and Prakriti are two independent realities. Purusha is conscious by nature. In fact, Nirvikara Chidvapuhu, he is changeless consciousness. That is the nature of the Purusha, the self, the Atma. So, Kartrutva, doership in Atma, he is Udasina, indifferent, Asangaha, unconnected. That is desirable, then only there can be moksha. If Atma was different from that, the only reason according to them also is because the Atma feels samsara is because aviveka, not because samsara is the true nature of Atma. And all kartrutva, then you would assign kartrutva someplace. So kartrutva, doership, creatorship is all assigned to Prakriti, the second principle. Even though they understand that Prakriti, being unconscious, cannot have Kartrutva, but they accept it. And somehow in associating Purusha, that Kartrutva becomes aroused, and that's how the activity in Prakriti starts. State of Pralaya, there is no Kartrutva in Prakriti at that time. Everything is merged into unmanifest. And something happens at the beginning of creation, when Prakriti is aroused into activity. So, what is it that arouses, that is the cause of the initiation of activity in Prakriti, which is inactive up to this point and becomes active and starts creating? What is that factor? So before that there is Gunanam Samabhava. In the Pralaya dissolution there is the equilibrium of all the gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Bhramsha, at the time of creation, some Bhramsha, an imbalance happens in these gunas. No, so what is the reason? What is the logical reason for you to say that this imbalance happens in the gunas for the activity or creation to start? No upapadyate. It's not tenable, not logical to say that imbalance happens in the gunas. So then Vedanta analyzes what can possibly bring about that imbalance. Avidya, karma or Purusha. Karma, all the jivas, avidya and Purusha. But avidya and karma, both of them are merged at the time of Pralaya. So those which are merged are themselves not evident, they cannot become the cause of the pravritti of the Prakriti. And Purusha is accepted as indifferent. So Purusha also cannot be the cause of Prakriti. Alright, avidyade prasuptatvat. There can be yet another hetu. Other than avidya, karma and Purusha, another hetu, another cause can also be imagined. Ishvara, Parameshvara. But then Parameshvara anangikara. They do not accept any entity called Ishvara, the creator. They may have some other difficulties in accepting that. So Ishvara, whom the Vaisheshikas etc. say is what prompts the activity in the Anus or Paramanus. That Ishvara, the prompter, is not accepted. There is nobody to prompt the activity. Itara hetutve. One will say that each guna prompts the other two gunas into activity. That's how activity starts. Pravritti syat sada. If it is their nature to prompt each other into activity, then that nature will keep on prompting them all the time, then there will be always pravritti. No, there is no nivritti, no pralaya, dissolution. No, they don't. If they don't, then they will never do it. Either sada pravritti, sada nivritti. They can now pravritti, then nivritti. That cannot be explained. Why do you say niyamo na pravrittinam guneshu atmaniva bhavet? Because in the gunas also, there is no niyama. Here the niyama is explained niyamaka, hetu. We do not find any hetu or the cause in the gunas which can be said to be the certain reason for prompting activity in others, nor do we find any such hetu in Atma, Guneshu Atmaniva, and therefore we do not find any niyamaka. Niyam means niyamaka, something that will definitely bring about the pravritti. We do not find either in the gunas or in Purusha, the way you describe gunas and Purushas. The way you, in fact, define or describe how the gunas are and Purushas are there, there is nothing in them which can be the hetu or the reason for prompting of the activity. Yatha kathanchidastuva pradhana pravritti. All right, even if we cannot explain the pravritti of pradhana, let us say it is there. Because creation is there, so pradhana pravritti, let us accept it. Then also, vishesho muktabaddhanam tadarthe nacha yujyate. You say that the Prakriti is Purushartha. Prakriti serves the purpose of Purusha. Purusha is Baddha and Mukta. Therefore, Prakriti provides Baddha Purusha what is appropriate for that Purusha and provides Mukta Purusha what is appropriate for that. In that case now, the activity of Prakriti is the same at any point. So how can you say that a given activity will serve the purpose of a bound person and the same activity will serve the purpose of a mukta person, freed person? How can it be? The needs of the one that is bound and one that is liberated, those needs are contrary to each other. At any point, Prakriti is doing one thing. How can that one thing that Prakriti does satisfy the contradictory needs of the different two kinds of Purushas? Mukta baddhanam vishesha tadarthe nacha yujyate. Tadarthe Prakriti is Purushartha, serving the purpose of Purusha. But if there's one Prakriti is there, Bandha Muktana, Mukta Baddhanam, Tadarthe. How can same Prakriti serve the purpose of Baddha Purusha and Mukta Purusha? Because the needs are contrary to each other. Artharthinostu asambandha. And then fundamentally, how do you say that Prakriti serves the purpose of Purusha? What is there in Prakriti? Or what is there in Purusha? That Prakriti will serve the purpose of Purusha, or Purusha will need, something from Prakriti. Artharthinotu asambandha. We cannot imagine the sambandha, the relationship between Prakriti and Purusha as artharthi. As one is artharthi who has a purpose to be served, other is artha who serves the purpose. According to this model, Prakriti is Purushartha. So Purusha arthi, the needy, and Prakriti fulfills that need. We do not see how that sambandha of artha and arthi, the need and needy, how can it be established? What is there in Prakriti that it becomes the artha? What is there in Purusha that becomes artharthi? Upakaraka sambandha. Who is artharthi? Upakarya, one who is helped, served. Then, who is artha? The one that serves the purpose, upakaraka, upakarya. So pradhanavade na yujyate. The way you describe or posit pradhana, that kind of sambandha is not logical, tenable. Why is it so? Because na arthignyah na itaro vivad. Look at the way you define Purusha. Purusha is jnana, jnana swarupa, of the nature of consciousness, changeless consciousness. That is how you describe the Purusha. Tasya asangatva nirvisheshatva abhyugamat. You describe Purusha asanga, unconnected, nirvishesha, devoid of any attributes. So being needy also is an attribute, isn't it? That brings about also a change, vikara. And consciousness, nirvikara, chidvapuhu, changeless consciousness, in Purusha there cannot be changed. For the Purusha to be earthy, itaropiva, neither can pradhana be artha. Serve the purpose. Jadatvahat. How can pradhana, that is unconscious, can sense what the Purusha needs? So pradhana being unconscious cannot be upakaraka, and Purusha being changeless cannot be upakarya. Therefore, upakaraka, upakarya sambandha also is not tenable. You say this thing, but how do you explain it? Then continuing, evam pradhanasya purushan prati pravrittim angikritya tya avyavastha ukta. Thus accepting that the pradhana serves the purpose of Purusha, your model, accepting that model also, we pointed out how that model does not make sense. Accepting that model, we showed how that is not logical. Savidanam na ghatate. In fact, that model itself doesn't make sense. That pradhanam carries out activity for the sake of Purusha, that itself doesn't make sense. So, pradhanasya, the verse 48 says, pradhanasya cha pararthyam purushasya vikaratah na yuktam sankhya shastrevi vikarepi na yujyate. Purushasya avikaratah pradhanasya pararthyam na yuktam. Purushasya avikaratah, because you say that Purusha is nirvikaraha. Therefore, Purusha does not possess the kind of qualities required for being upakarya. Artharthi or Swami. Swamya and Swami. Swamya, that which is servant. Swami, the one who has servant. Swamya, being the state of servant. That servant-master relationship cannot exist, cannot be explained, I should say, between the pradhana and Purusha. So says here, Purushasya avikaratah. Now see, it's very interesting. Purusha is avikari, is changeless, nirvikara. Pradhana krita atishaya yogitva lakshana vikara rahitatvat. See how a compound Sanskrit word samasa can describe an idea very accurately. Vikara rahitatvat. Purusha is vikara rahita, is devoid of vikara or change. That's what your principle is. Now what can bring about vikara? Pradhana can bring about vikara if Purusha has to be helped. If Pradhana helps and Purusha has to be helped, then I can be helped, let us say. Then you can bring about some change in me. I feel bad, you can make me feel good. I feel weak, you can make me feel strong. I feel bound, you can make me feel free. So therefore one who is helped, he should undergo a change, which is brought about because is brought about by the other one who imparts something special to me. I don't have something now, I'm in need of money. You do something that imparts me a special thing called being moneyed. You make me moneyed or wealthy. From poor, you make me wealthy. So that Visheshatvam, that wealthiness is imparted by you, then only you can help me. This goes for anything. I'm hungry. You impart some Visheshas to me, then you help me. If what you do does not bring about any change in me, for me to be helped, thus there must be a change corresponding to what you do, help. And for you to help me also, you must be able to bring about that change. You should be able to bring out a change, cook food, etc. And in me, the appeasing hunger should take place for me to be helped. So change should be there in the one who is helped. And change should be there in the one who is helping, isn't it? Now, so pradhana kut atishaya yogitva lakshana. If pradhana brings about an atisha, brings about some change, some improvement, let us say. Purusha is in need and pradhana does something which brings about a change or improvement in Purusha, then you can say that Purusha has been helped. But when Purusha is nirvikara, changeless, how can you bring about any change in him? To help him, you should bring about a change which makes some improvement is there. Atishayatvam is there. So some improvement is there then compared to what was earlier. But since Purusha is nirvikara, changeless, therefore, the change of the nature of improvement cannot be brought about by pradhana. Because the nature of Purusha, therefore, Purusha is not qualified to be helped. Pradhana krita atishaya yogitva. Yogitva being endowed with the atishaya, the change or improvement, brought about pradhana, brought about pradhana. So that's called vikara. Vikara hi tattvat. Because Purusha is nirvikara, devoid of vikara, of the nature of a change which can be brought about by pradhanam. So pradhanasya paratham na yuktam. So even if pradhana wants to do something, Purusha is not available, he doesn't possess something, he is not helpable. Therefore, looking at the nature of Purusha, pradhana cannot be parartham. Parartham means the helpfulness. Upakarakatvam cannot be in pradhana. Nahi anuvideya kruta atishaya ayogini swamitvam upadyate ityartah. Imagine Purusha is Swami, Pradhana is Swamya or servant, Sevaka. So just a Sevak or a servant does something to help the Swami, so Pradhana does something to help the Purusha. Now when can I be a Swami? When I am available for the help that the servant provides. I am thirsty. He gives me water, available for the help in terms of appeasing the thirst, then only he can be my servant and I can be Swami. Anuvideya kruta atishaya ayogini. But an entity, the ayogi, that is not connected with, cannot be endowed with, the atishaya, the help or access that is brought about by anuvideya means servant or obedient. An obedient servant brings about some help, which is what changes or helps the Swami. When Swami is not competent or is not available for any change. Sir, there is food for you, I am not hungry. What I am not thirsty. He is not available. How can that poor servant also cannot be a servantness? No, this cannot have masterness. So Swamitvam na upapadyate. The Purusha cannot be a Swami because the kind of change that a servant can bring about in Swami, that change is not possible in Purusha. Therefore, Swamitvam, Purusha does not possess the attribute of being a Swami. Even if Pradhan is available for being served, this fellow is not available. Yadi Purushasya Pradhanavai Swamya Upavattai. None of the things are happening, you can't say this. So, Purusha is a Swami because things are happening here and there is liberation, there is bondage. So, Pradhanavai Swamya Upavattai. Suppose for somehow explaining the Swamya, the being the master of the Pradhanam, so you accept that Purusha undergoes the change. Because if Purusha does not undergo change, Swami cannot become, a person cannot be Swami unless some change happens in him. Then only he can be helped or served. Alright, so Purusha is Swami, somehow undergoes the change, let us accept it. Tada angikrutebi vikare pradhanasya payartham na yujate angikrutebi vikare. Then for the sake of your theory that Purusha is helped, so we accept some vikara in Purusha, that it becomes a Swami, he is helped. Then also, pradhanasya parartham, but then pradhana doesn't have what becomes to become a sevak or parartha. Purusha does not have that which takes him for it to be Swami. Pradhana does not have that which takes itself to become a Swami or sevak. Vikaravataha anityatva niyamat nitya pradhana swamya ayogadityartha. Now for them, Purusha and Pradhana both are nitya. Then this activity nitya can go on. But for the sake of Pradhana, serving the purpose of Purusha, you accept that Purusha as Vikari is available some change. Then also Pradhanam cannot be the Parartham, or serve the purpose, helpful. Why not? Because Vikara Anityatva Niyamat, once you accept Purusha as available to change, anything that changes is impermanent. So here is Pradhana which is Nitya and Purusha is Anitya. How can Anitya can become the master of a Nitya Pradhanam? Anitya cannot become the master because he is not there all the time. Pradhana is there all the time, Purusha is not. Therefore, Vikaravataha Anityatva Niyamat. If Purusha is accepted as changeful, then it becomes Anitya or impermanent. Then Nitya Pradhana Swami Ayogat. Then it cannot be Swami. Cannot enjoy Swamyatvam or the master, the ownership of Pradhana which is Nitya. Anitya cannot be Swami of Nitya. Anitya comes and goes. Nitya is always there. And that is an inferior quality really, therefore cannot be a Swami. So na yuktam, second line, na yuktam Sankhya Shastrepi. There is an api there. Sankhya Shastrepi. Api Shabdat na Veda Vahyeshu Shastreshu eva vyavastha. So any Shastra other than Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. Vedanta will say they are all Shastra Bahyas, even though they call themselves Vedikas, Naiyayikas, Vaisheshikas, this, but we don't call them because they don't accept Vedanta in totality. They take one part here, one part there, and that's how they claim to have the origin in Vedas. They don't take the entire Vedas. Only Vedanta does it. Mimamsaka also only take the Karma Kanda. Vedanta takes both Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, the entire Veda, and explains and sees the consistency throughout, or shows the consistency. So anybody else is, Veda Bahya Shastram. Other Shastra or Veda Bahya. So, but in this case, Veda Bahya means the Charvakas and Bauddhas and Jainas, etc. So Veda Bahya Shastreshu Avyavasa. Not avyavastha, lack of consistency exists in all the Shastras which are outside the pale of Vedas. Kintu Sankhya Shastra, but even in Sankhya Shastra, which claims to be Vaidika, in Sankhya Shastra also, avyavastha exists. There is no consistency in what you are promoting, what you are imagining, or presenting. Tasyapi pumbuddhi mulatvam. Sankhya Shastra also is its mula in pumbuddhi, meaning it is the creation of a human being. In this case, Kapila. But that still, it is the creation of great Rishi, doesn't matter. But still, it is the limitations of the human mind. Na samyak veda mulatvam, therefore, a proper mulatvam. Sankhya does not properly, totally belong to Veda because a lot of the portion is only imagined by a human being. This is a kalpana. So not only Shastras who are outside the pale of Vedas have no consistency, even Sankhya also, which claims to be Vedika, also doesn't have consistency because Veda is a Purusha, not a product of Purusha Buddhi, but this is a product of Purusha Buddhi. Therefore, it also is not Pramanam. Pradhana Purushayo Sambandha Bhavaktam Prapanchayati. So, Pradhana Sambandha Bhava, the absence of Sambandha of Upakaraka, Upakarya, Artharthi, that Sambandha Bhavi pointed out how there cannot be that kind of Sambandha between the two. Prapanchayati, that itself is now further elaborated in the next verse. Sambandhan papattescha prakrute purushasya cha mitho yuktam tadarthatvam pradhanasya chititvatah. Prakrute purushasya cha mitha sambandha anupatte. Mitha mutual. That the immutual relationship of the Purusha and Prakriti also is not tenable. Pradhanasya achititvatah tadarthatvam ayuktam. And Pradhana being unconscious also cannot be the arthatvam, cannot serve the Purusha, cannot be Upakaraka of Purusha. Already stated, but then it's clarified further. This verse doesn't tell a new point, just clarifies what has already been stated. So Tika says, Pradhanasya asanga udasina svavatvat, because Purushasya asanga udas, this is Purusha is asanga, udasina, asanga, unconnected, udasina, unaffected. Asanga, unconnected, udasina, unaffected, unconnected. Svavatva, that's a Svava Purusha. So this is what is desirable for them. Ultimately, Purusha should have this Svabhava, otherwise he cannot be liberated. If Sangha or being associated, connected with something is nature of Purusha, he will always be influenced by what it is connected with. If Purusha can be connected with Pradhanam or Prakriti, then Prakriti always influences Purusha, subjectly being influenced. Sambandham is, when my son does something, I get affected, even if I don't do anything. That fellow goes someplace and does all kinds of stuff and I get affected anyway. So, moment Sangha is there, you are going to be affected one way. It can be improvement also. He makes a great name in the world, then also, you are very happy. Your chest expands. Either way. Asanga cannot be. Udasina, I am disinterested, unconnected. Whatever happens. So again I can be affected when I am connected. in the sense that I am affected. He is successful, therefore I feel something. That his success must also bring about some change in me, then only it can affect me. What's the big deal? What does it matter? Suppose it doesn't matter to me, then also Purusha will be unaffected. So asanga udasina svabhavatvat. Otherwise Prakriti will always influence Purusha. If Prakriti is connected, or it can influence Purusha, then Purusha can never rest in peace, really. Poor fellow. Can never. Prakriti jadatvena, and Prakriti is jada. Jada means, jada means achetana, unconscious. So Purusha cannot have pravritti of his own because of asanga udasinatvam, and Prakriti cannot have pravritti of her own because of achetanatvam. Svata pranupatte. So both of them possess the nature because of which there cannot be an activity by themselves. They cannot have any activity inherently in them. So to bring activity, some other factor is required, but both of them themselves are of the nature which are inactive. So two inactive, unconnected entities cannot have mutual sambandha or relationship. Pradhanasya tadartyam purushatam ayuktam yukti shunyam. So to say that pradhana is serves the purpose of Purusha, upakaya is ayuktam yukti shunyam, is devoid of any reasoning. Achityutah jadatvat, because then pradhanasya achititvatah, because pradhana is unconscious, therefore also pradhanasya bhrutyavat upakarakatva sambhavat. What is unconscious cannot serve as a servant. This table can't do that. Chair also cannot do. They can't serve as servants. They don't know what I want. I want this to be lower than what it is, higher than what it is. This book doesn't know what I want. Acetanam, unconscious thing, cannot act as a servant. So Pradhana being Acetanam cannot act as servant of the Purusha, and Purusha unaffected cannot be a Swami. So it was stated earlier, the reason is given here in this particular verse. Pradhanasya bhrutyavat upakarakatva sambhavat. Pradhana can upakaraka like a servant is to the master. Ataha pradhana purushayoho arthatita kalpana pradhana purushayoho arthatita kalpana na yuktimati. Therefore this kalpana, that pradhana and purusha, in spite of your describing what they are, pradhana is acetanam and purusha is nirvikara, asanga achetana nirvikara. With that kind of nature that you describe, the relationship is not possible, artha-arthitva is not possible, therefore creation is not possible, nothing is possible. You can't explain anything. Iti bhava. Again, purushasya avikaratah, that was verse 48. So, pradhanasya achititvatah. Pradhana being unconscious. Verse 48 said, Purusha avikarta, Purusha is avikari. So, that is spashtayati, that is clarified in the next verse. Kriyotpattau vinashitvam jnanamatre cha purvavat nirnimitte tva nirmoksha pradhanasya prasajyate. Kriyotpatto vinashitvam jnanamatre purvavad. So kriyotpatto, meaning that if an action is admitted, kriya utpatti, if there is utpatti of the kriya, if any action is accepted in Purusha, then kriyotpatto vinashitvam, Purusha is vinashi because changing. Jnanamatre purva, he says, no, Purusha is only jnaha, jnanamatra, meaning he is only consciousness. The same problem, that again there cannot be swamya swami bhava. So purvat. So here the Tika explains, Purushe yat kinchita kriyotpatto abhivagamyamanaya. If you accept yat kinchita, in some kind of a kriya is accepted in Purusha, suppose you accept it, then only Sankhya Siddhanta can work. Vinashitvam. Then, because there is kriya, it was already stated earlier. Because there is kriya or action in Purusha, where action is, there is change. Where there is change, there is vinasha. It is perishable. Tasya prasajjeta. So purushasya vinashitvam prasajjeta. Prasajjeta, the occasion of vinashitvam, the perishability in Purusha will be there, will happen if Purusha is accepted as vikarya changing. Why? So now logic is from yat kriyavata tad anityam yatha ghataditi vyapti darshanat. Just as in ghata, if ghata was not there, what would Vedanta do? I don't know. But then ghata. Ghatadi yat kriyavat tad anityatvam. The ghata is the product of kriya, subject to kriya. It can perform kriya, like filling water, etc. So yat kriyavat, that which is possessed of kriya or activity, tad anityam, is impermanent. Yatha ghatadi, just as ghata, etc. In every object that is kriya is impermanent, is possessed of. So nama, rupa and kriya. Every entity is characterized by name, form and function. So because this contributes something in a scheme of things, performs a function, performs an action like filling water, etc., holding water, that is anityam, because it's created and therefore it will perish. Yat kriyavat tad anityam yatha ghataditi vyapti darshanat. This vyapti means universal concomitance, meaning that these invariable relationships we find without exception. That whatever is subject to action is impermanent. Like a part, this is what we find everywhere. Nityasya purusha avyugamyate sankhyahi, but sankhya's desire purusha to be nitya. Even though they accept Purusha as being influenced by Pradhanam, still they want Purusha to be Nitya. That's the interesting thing. You want Purusha to be influenced by Pradhanam, to be helped by Pradhanam, to be served by Pradhanam, and still you want Purusha to be Nitya. How can it be? Because what is helped is Vikari, so it's perishable. Nityasya Purusha Abhigamyate Sankhyahi. On one hand, you want Purusha to be changeable so that he can be helped. Some Atisha, some change can be brought about in Purusha by Pradhanam. And then you also want Purusha to be Nitya or permanent. Now both are contradictory. Then he says, wait a minute. When we say vikara, it is not the vikara that you talk about. Nanu na parispandaha parinamava purushasya kriya abhivagamyate. Purusha kriya abhivagamyate yena anityatva prasangaha. Nanu? Then Sankhya says, wait a minute. You are imagining what Kriya is and imposing it upon us and then drawing all these conclusions. We don't mean that by Kriya. Nanu na parispandaha means vibration. Meaning Kriya in space. Parinamaha, transformation, Kriya in time. So parispanda, vibration is the Kriya that takes place in space, and transformation of milk into curd is a Kriya that takes place in time. We don't mean Kriya in Purusha in time and place. Alright. So Purushasya Kriya na abhivagamyate, yeah, anityatva person, then anityata is alright. If Purusha changes in time, anitya, in place, anityatva alright. We don't say, kintu jnanameva kriya abhigamyate iti. The only kriya that is there in Purusha is jnanam. That knowledge can take place in Purusha. Purusha can become enlightened and become liberated. Or Purusha has the nature of jnana, of the nature of conscious knowledge. So knowledge is only kriya that we accept in Purusha, not kriya in terms of change in time and place. If this is what you have to say. We are saying Purusha is the nature of knowledge. And so no change in knowledge in time and place. Only kriya is of the nature of knowledge. Alright. If jnanam is the only kriya you accept in Purusha because jnana swarupa, tari janyam ajanyam va jnana upayate. Please tell us that jnana or knowledge you are talking about, is it janya jnanam? Is it jnana that takes place like ghatakara, patakara, ghatajnanam, patajnanam, is janya jnanam? When I am looking this day, I don't see the pot. When I look at the pot, then ghatajnanam happens. So it is janya jnanam, jnanam that takes place. So when you say jnanam is the nature of Purusha, is it janya jnanam or ajanya jnanam? Ajanya means that does not, it is just of the nature. It is not born. What kind of jnanam do you accept in Purusha? No, bhayatha bhigatate. Either way, Purusha cannot be nitya or affect or help, either way. So jnana matre ja purvavata. See, purvavata is as we already pointed out earlier. Janya, so jnana means if janya jnanam, janya jnana yoge, vikaritvat anityatva apatti. We say that jnanam is the kriya in Purusha. Is that jnanam, janya jnanam, jnanam that is created, that takes place, is a new jnanam, ghata jnanam, pata jnanam, is what you mean by that's janya jnanam. So is this jnanam, is a kind of jnanam that Purusha possesses, then is anityam. Vikaritvat, anityatva, because ghata jnanam goes, pata jnanam comes, so that jnanam which is janyam, born is avikari. So Purusha becomes vikari. Purusha, possessed of impermanent knowledge, is vikari. So anityatva, then Purusha will be anitya. Anitya cannot have moksha. Moksha is supposed to be nitya. Anitya entity cannot have nitya moksha. Ajanye, jnana yogitve, alright. No, we say jnanam is ajanyam, unborn, permanent. Then, we told you already, then there is no change in Purusha. Na pradhana prati Swami sambhavedi ukta doshapattehi. If pradhana cannot do any change in Purusha because it is changeless jnanam. If Purusha is ajanya or changeless, unborn means changeless. Because with the birth all the changes begin. If the jnana is ajanyam, then Purusha is the nature of changeless knowledge. Then regardless of what Prakriti does, nothing happens to Purusha. He is unaffected. Then how can he be helped? He cannot be Swami. Prakriti cannot be like a sevaka. And this Swami, therefore, na pradhana swamya sambhava iti. Then pradhana, Purusha cannot be a Swami with reference to pradhana. In that case, then what happens? Again, Prakriti cannot be Purushartha, Prakriti cannot do anything, cannot bring about liberation, bondage, nothing. So that model of Sambandha of Prakriti Purusha, of Upakaraka Upakarya is not possible if Purusha is Nitya, as was earlier pointed out. So Purvat means earlier verse that we discussed. The earlier verse was the 48th verse. So, Pradhana Kruta Atisha Yogitva Lakshana Vikarrahitatva. Purusha is devoid of the change. That should be brought about when Pradhana does something, when that Purusha is not available for change, then he can't be helped, he can't be a Swami. Tasmat Purushasya Asanga Udasinatvat Anade Atishayatvat Pravartakatva Anupattehe. So Purusha also cannot be Pravartaka. Pradhana or the Prakriti, matter, energy, being unconscious requires a Pravartaka, something that prompts into activity. Unconscious entity needs something else to prompt it to activity. This Purusha is changeless, therefore it cannot prompt. The prompter also will undergo a change. Some sankalpa should happen in me, then I can prompt an activity, but Purusha is absolutely changeless, therefore Purushasya asanga udasinatvat. Neither he can be helped nor he can help, either way. So, anadheya atishayatvat, no atishayata, no improvement or change can take place. Therefore, pravartakatva. So, Purusha cannot be pravartaka also, nor can be pravritya. So, pravartaka and pravritta, either way, or pravartya rather. Pravartaka and pravartya, either way is not possible. Anyasya hetvantarasya Pradhana Vikara Atiriktasya Anuvagamat. The only hetu that they present is Pradhana Vikara. That Pradhana undergoes Vikara to him Purusha, that's the only hetu that they have. But if Purusha is Nitya Jnanam, they are not available for that. Therefore, no, you don't have any hetu. You don't have any other explanation of how you held the Purusha. Asanga Udasena Purusha cannot be held, and so Pradhana cannot do anything, and there is no other hetu or any other reason that you can advance. So, hetvantarasya Pradhana Vikara Atiriktasya. Only hetu that is present is Pradhana Vikara. Changes in Pradhana. Now, that's only, that change doesn't bring to Purusha, for it is not available. So now what else? What else do you have to explain the change in Purusha? That becomes bound or liberated, etc. What's helped? Pralayeche pradhana vikaranam alabdhatmataya pravakatva ayogat. And pralayeche pradhana vikaranam alabdhatmataya. Coming back to pralaya. In pralaya there is balance of gunas. And when can creation take place? Initially when there is imbalance in the gunas. But Pradhana Vikarana Alabdhatmataya, Purusha cannot prompt any activity because Purusha is changeless knowledge. So Purusha can be Pravartaka. What is there? There is nothing to actually, impel any activity in Pradhanam at the time of Pralaya. Purusha is there, but he can't do anything. Pradhana is inactive. So what will bring Pradhana into activity? There is no now cause available to us and reason available to us. That was nirmittaya. That means that nirmittaya pradhana pravritti, meaning that pradhana comes into activity for no reason at all, because we can't find any reason. Purusha cannot be reason for pradhana activity because Purusha is nirvikara. Pradhana cannot be cause of activity, pradhana is a chetana. And other than that, you don't provide any reason because you don't accept a Parameshwara or any other prompter. Therefore, and still you accept pravritti in pradhanam is nirnimitta. That means that no nimitta or cause or hetu can be explained in pravritti of that creation in the pradhanam. The nirnimitta eva. It will be without that. If it's nirnimitta, then always pravritti will be there. Why should it then become nivritta? If pravritti in pradhanam without a reason, then it will go on. Or it will never go on either way. That also we said. And therefore, the second line said, nirnimittatve to nirnimittatve nirnimitte to anirmoksha prasanga. So pradhanasya prasajyate. Pradhanasya nirnimitte. That's how it is. Anirmoksha prasanga prasajyate. Pradhanasya vyapara nirnimitte. If vyapara, activity of pradhana, is without nimitta, without a reason. Abhyupagamyamane, if that's what, see, he's back to the quarter. Whatever kind of reasons he presented, they don't make sense. So back to the quarter. Now therefore, if you, the only thing you'd accept is that pradhana pravritti nirnimitta. That pradhana creates all that without any logical explanation. If that's where he has come to now. So he's checked up to that point. So if you accept that, tada sarvada sarvan prati, then because there is no reason why pradhana acts, so it will keep on acting, but there is no reason why it should not act. If being is acting is involved, is inherent in pradhanam. See, svabhava doesn't require nimitta, understand? They discussed. Swabhava does not require nimitta. Fire does not require reason to be hot. So nirnimitta is one thing, is swabhava, inherent. If it's inherent, then it will, fire always will be hot. Then this pradhana will always be active. There will be no pralaya, will keep on expanding, universe. Someday it will burst out, so that it should then contract, otherwise it will all burst out. You would accept even scientists all will accept cyclic. Right now the energy is the universe expanding, someday it will run out of the stream and it will start contracting again and back to where it was. Whatever that was. But anyway, so this is the model. And otherwise it will go on and it will burst out. That they don't like. They also want cyclic thing. Nirnimi pradhanasya vyapare nirnimitte abhivagamyamane. If vyapara, activity of pradhanam, namely creation, etc., is nirnimittam, without any reason, then that means it's nature, Then tasya sarvada sarvan prati pravritti sambhavat, then prakriti or pradhanam will keep on doing it towards everybody, because that's its nature. So pradhana is always pravrittam. This Purusha then, Duk Shaktimadam, Purushanam, Tad Darsanasya, Avarjaniyatvat. And Purusha, who is a Sakshi or a witness, all time witnessing the pravritti of pradhanam, he cannot avoid witnessing that pravritti because to witness is the nature, because jnana is the nature of Purusha. To be aware is the nature of Purusha. That awareness is again permanent. Impermanent makes Purusha impermanent. If that awareness is permanent, then it is always aware of what the pradhanam is doing. Then tat avardiniyadat anirmoksha prasajyeta. Therefore, the Purusha cannot get liberated because he is always aware of the pravritti of the pradhanam. And therefore, there will be no liberation because there is no change. That fellow cannot get away. Moksha is to have some peace, And that, if you can become unaware of this pravritti, then that fellow can have some peace. Now he will never have peace. And in moksha prasanga, they have accepted the model, The day-to-day model is what they have accepted. What they find in their life is the model they have accepted of pradhana and prakriti and purusha. But that doesn't work. Purusha can never be free, If Prakriti is the one that is doing everything, and this fellow is dependent, he can never be free. He can never be at peace. He can be never liberated. Ataitam avyavasthitam sankhya shastram na mokshavi shraddhem iti bhavaha. Therefore, Sankhya Shastra doesn't make sense. There is no vyavastha, there is no order. There is no logical explanation of what you are saying. You are saying things all right. When you analyze the reasonability or tenability of what you are saying, we find no reason, no logical explanation to explain what you are saying. Meaning that what you are saying is not logical, doesn't make sense. How can Buddhi cannot accept something that doesn't make sense? Buddhi always requires sense. The reasoning arguments are all, Buddhi requires a sense in everything. Then it can relate. Otherwise it is, poor thing is uncomfortable. Doesn't make sense. I don't know what to do. This fellow has attacked another country. Doesn't make sense. People are all confused. They're all, they don't know how to respond to this thing, Nobody they thought it's going to do, but how does it do that? Something has happened there. Because of 2 years of this pandemic, the fellow was totally isolated for 2 years, did not meet anybody. People think something has happened to him. Anyway, that is inexplicable. If what you do is inexplicable, then how can people make out how to respond to you? And therefore, this cannot become a model to understand the life. What does not make sense to Buddhi cannot become the model for explaining life. Therefore, na shraddhayam, that mumukshus, those who want moksha, which has to be nitya, eternal, this theory or principle or the model prism of Sankhya doesn't make sense, because with that model you can never be liberated. Mumukshubhi na shraddhe vidibhava. Therefore, mumukshus should not put the trust in this thing. Discard it. So this is a mananam part. One by one now there will be exams. The teacher will examine. Other models that are available. Sankhya is a very close model. Because idea of Sankhya about Atma is very close to idea of Atma that Vedanta has. And therefore, there are 4 Sankhyas have accept many Atmas, etc. But still, nirvikara chidvapuhu. The Atma is ever free, ever changeless consciousness. The only way the Atma feels bondage is because of Viveka. So what is required is Viveka Jnana. In all these Sankhya's are very close to Vedanta. Therefore, they are taken up for discussion. Earlier was of course Buddhas. The Kshanika Vijnanis, then Shunya Vijnanis. Now we come to the Vedikas. They were all Avedikas. And so they were addressed first. Now, and before that, of course, the Charvakas, Deha, Indriya, etc. were all dismissed as Atma. So Charvakas were taken care of earlier. Or different variety. One who says Deha is Atma, Indriya is Atma, Mana is Atma, Buddhi is Atma, etc. Then Buddhi, when it came, then came the Kshanika Vijnana, because Kshanika Vijnana is called Buddhi as Atma. So that was taken up. When that was dismissed, then this fellow was left, Shunya. So that was taken care of. So, Jainism, that also. So Deha Parimana Atma. In between was taken up. Then Kshanika Vijnani, and then the Shunyavadi. So all the Avedikas were taken care of first. Now Vedikas, then Sankhya. Then they will examine now the Vaisheshika. Next one. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.